Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale. So the first thing I'm going to start off kind of running through things in this episode is kind of clarifying something, because I thought this whole situation with Jason was like, oh, some twisted prank they were doing just to get attention. Apparently, I was completely wrong about that. Really, apparently, Jason wanted to disappear. He wanted to leave Riverdale, kind of have a new, fresh start. So the whole point was to be like, oh, fake, like, oh, he was out in the water, he ended up drowning, and the whole point was to be like, okay, pretend that you're dead, not let anyone know, and go off somewhere else and kind of live your life. But Cheryl was like, the moment you get there, make sure you contact me within like a month or whatever, and that's why this entire time, like over this course of this week, like over that week of him being gone, like she obviously she kept up appearances. That's what it was all for. So, in a way, like it kind of adds more to Cheryl's character too, because it shows you that she's actually a good sister. Like she followed her brother's plan. Like she knew it's kind of a crazy plan, but she went along with it because she loves her brother. And it's like, she doesn't really know exactly why he did it, but nevertheless, she went along with his plan and everything. That's kind of something that kind of comes up in this episode about Cheryl, is the fact that she's she looked at her brother as like, oh, he could do no wrong. And obviously that kind of got shattered with that discovery about that whole book. Obviously, I'll get into that in a little bit, but mainly, it's just finding out that her brother kind of participated in that too, because at first she's like, oh yeah, it's there's some made up crap. Like, my brother's kind of like, he's the best. He's like way above that. So it's like, she always held him in such high regards. So that's also kind of trailing back to the whole Polly and him situation. I think that's why she's like, oh, basically saying like your sister went crazy. Like I think even in Cheryl's mind, she's like, oh, Polly just went crazy on her own. Jason didn't do anything to her. There's no way he could have. And it seems like maybe that's not the case. And that's something I'm curious to see, especially going forward. It's like she had put her brother on such a high pedestal, and now it's like she's starting to learn stuff about him that maybe he wasn't exactly the person that she thought he was. Like obviously, like Cheryl and him, like, I mean, we as the viewers don't really know Jason. Like we didn't really get to know him, but it makes you wonder, is he like Cheryl? Or because Cheryl can be very mean. She can say some very hurtful things. I mean, granted, it seems like she might have always been like that, but even more so now, you can be like, well, it's her way of dealing. Like she's lashing out because she's dealing with so much. I mean, she's kind of a suspect in her bro's murder because of all these lies and everything. It's like you had an opportunity. So I mean, it's like, who's to say you're not? Even the sheriff's kind of basically like, who's to say you're not lying now? Like trying to cover your tracks, because now you're coming up with this. Oh, all of a sudden that Jason was supposed to be, leaving town, and like who's to say like that's not something you just concocted to say, like try and gain our sympathy or something. I mean, to me, what crosses my mind with the whole Jason situation, the fact is he didn't want anyone to know. The only person that knew was obviously Cheryl. So, to me, I'm thinking maybe it has something to do with Polly. Maybe it has something to do with his family. I mean, like I said, we're nowhere close to finding out what exactly it is that drove him to decide, like, hey, I'm going to leave town by faking my death. It's like, why would he need to fake his death? I mean, considering who his family is, like, but obviously his family seems like the top of the top, like 1% or something like that. They're pretty big and influential in Riverdale, so they're probably rich and definitely rich, probably have a lot of connections. So even if he ran away, they'd be able to track him down, which kind of points to like, obviously his parents has to be a big reason why he's running away. But I'm also thinking maybe it's something that has to do with Polly, because the fact is we still don't 100% know what went down between Jason and Polly to kind of make them go down, things to end up the way they did, because no one knows 100% of what's going on. So, but luckily, like, obviously all eyes are kind of pointed at Cheryl, but luckily Archie helped her out by being like, okay, I was there. Obviously he leaves Grundy out of it. He's like, yo, I was there by myself. Well, I wasn't by myself. I had my dog with me. I was practicing my music, and I heard the shot, because she brings up the shot she heard, and so corroborating her story a little bit. So he felt he needed to help her, because it's like all eyes were kind of pointing to her. It's like, with another witness saying like, oh yeah, there was another, they heard the shot too, that they were there that day. I mean, the sad thing is that now it kind of, well, I'll get to that in a little later on. But Grundy was super not happy about that. She's like, what the hell are you doing? We were in the clear. Like, she'd already kind of put herself out there. All the attention was towards her. And now that you said something, the fact is now, I mean, Archie's like, well, the fact of the matter is, it's like, I kept your name on it. But it's like, if the sheriff decides to look any deeper, he might look back on it and on me and everything. And Archie's like, I had to do it because it's like, if I didn't, sheriff, actually trying to do the right thing, It's kind of what he's always wanted to do in this entire situation, was say something because it was the right thing to do, especially because under these circumstances, it might have helped with the whole Jason situation. So, like I said, we're back at that point where it's like, I'm still flip-flopping on Grundy. Like, overall, it's kind of like what they're doing. Obviously, there's the big issue of like, I mean, there's a thing that has to be considered. Honestly, I don't know how old Archie is. Archie might be 18, so legally it might not be an issue. Obviously, there's the obvious moral issue, but if Archie's like 18, it is consensual, which I don't think he is 18 since, well, no, he must not be 18 because she was like, oh, I could go to jail and stuff like that. So it's like, nah. I mean, granted, I get getting fired because no matter, even if he is of the legal age, even if he's a legal age, the fact of the matter is that it's a student-teacher relationship is still not a good thing. It's not allowed. So I don't know. But like I said, it's a situation where it's like, you see multiple moments in her that's kind of like, she's very sweet, and it's like she does actually care about Archie because she talks to his dad, because his dad is like very bleh about the whole music thing, which, I mean, to play devil's advocate in his situation, it's like he's honestly just concerned for his son's future. It's like, oh, being it's like, it's nice that you want to play music and you love it and everything, but the fact of the matter is, playing football could get you to a scholarship, get you a good education, it could lead to you getting a good job. I mean, really more so than anything, his dad wants him to work with him, kind of eventually run the company and everything. But more, it's just like he wants his son to be happy, but also it's just he wants his son to have a good, stable life. Because it's like asking Grundy, it's like, oh, is this a profession that he can actually, have a good living off of? And she's like, well, you won't know until you try. So it's like you see moments like that. But then, like I said, I also go back to the last episode where I feel like like I said last episode, I agree 100% with Jughead that she's just manipulating him. So it's like, it's still hard to say exactly how I feel. I'm very conflicted when it comes to her, like, in the grand scheme of all of this. So, I mean, well, just moving on. A big part of this episode was about Veronica. She went out on a date with kind of one of the big stars of the football team, Chuck, who's basically, he's the coach's son, so he kind of gets special treatment in regards to. Basically, he slut shames her, and to basically start spreading all these rumors about, oh, they did this and that, when it's like, all they did was kiss and talk. That was it. But he starts kind of slut shaming, so Veronica goes like, you know what? Screw it. I'm getting my revenge. And it's like, you see kind of that, like, probably you see a little bit of her transitioning into who she was before she came to Riverdale, because we've seen this like very kind-hearted, sweet girl trying to do her best. Obviously, we've seen those kind of moments where she kind of like snaps, and it's kind of like you see kind of her be like, no, I'm not going to take your shit, especially when it came to Cheryl and everything. But you definitely saw it kind of kick up this episode. But you had Betty being like, no, don't do that. That's not the right way to go about things. We need to kind of, go through the proper channels and everything. Even Veronica, and Betty talk to Chuck, but he's being a complete and utter douchebag, basically, like, like almost goading him. It's like, oh, come on and try something. I mean, if you can actually do something, I mean, and it's like, you're like, what is your deal, dude? Like, you don't have to be such an asshole, but it's a situation where it's like, oh, he feels he's on top of the world, he's untouchable, so like no matter what he does, is what he says goes, because it's like, oh, everyone got his back. And it's just, I guess it's that, especially because he's got this little group that will have his back, but it's also because he's like top dog because he's on the football team and stuff. And it's like, oh, you can't really say anything because like, my dad's a coach too. So it's like, I don't know. It just kind of sucked because like him and Veronica were having a nice moment and everything, and it was like, oh, this is gonna be interesting going forward. And in a moment, you turn like literally like a minute or two later, find out like it transitions, the scene changes, and it's like, oh, he's slut shaming her now. So that sucks for something that didn't even happen. Like, and that's the sad thing is with the situation like this, all it takes is a single lie. It actually kind of corresponds with something else I was watching tonight, The Blacklist, but that's its own thing. But and it's I mean, especially in high school, it's just like, rumor. That's all it is. It takes rumors and one person saying something. But apparently, Veronica isn't the first. Betty ends up talking to other girls who basically in the same situation, not just with Chuck, but with other, his other cronies as well. They end up finding out there's actually a book where they basically write down all the kind of like, the way that they treat women essentially. Like, the word they use is like, oh yeah, that, oh, basically it's their way of writing down their quote unquote conquests, all the women they've conquered and stuff like that. You even had Cheryl kind of having her input, kind of going back to kind of like Mean Girl Cheryl, where she's kind of like, well, I'm dealing with my own issues. It's like we all have our crosses to bear. You're dealing with this whole slut things. Even going as far as like jokingly calling, it's like, oh, come on, sluts. Stop, kind of get so bent out of shape. It's like boys will be boys. Once again, this is kind of a situation where it's like, yeah, because she refers to them as boys because she doesn't think of Jason like them. Because once again, it's the mentality of, oh, my brother's way above this. But like I said, she found out apparently he's not. Granted, we don't know Chuck obviously lied about the whole Veronica situation. Who's to say Jason didn't do the same thing? Peer pressure to feel like, oh, I need to be tough and masculine. And like, oh yeah, I've had sex with so many women. It's like, oh, Paulie let me do this and that. It's like, just kind of because you want to be accepted by everyone, you want to feel special. So you want to just kind of get that recognition and have everyone look at you like you're special. So, but what I really liked is the fact is that Veronica snapped at, Cheryl, because like I said, that kind of darker side of her being like, you know what? The fact of the matter is, like, these beautiful girls didn't deserve to be treated the way they are. So it's like, I'm going to basically she's going to, like, burn them, with whatever plan they come up with. And she's basically like, if Cheryl gets in the way or even calls them sluts one more time, she's going to burn her too. And I was like, ooh, it's like, dude, it's one of those moments you're like, yeah, you start like punching the air because you're like, yeah, just because that's, I don't know. I know I'm not really describing that well, but it's just one of those moments you're just like, that's so kick-ass that you said that. That's so badass. But what I found most interesting about this situation is Betty kind of more so seeing, obviously, it wasn't necessarily a darker side for Veronica, but we saw her kind of get serious. Like I said, it feels like we're seeing who she was before she came to Riverdale. But now we get to see a little bit of that darker side of Betty, which, like I said, we've seen a little bit, like, especially in the first episode and everything, but definitely in this episode, like, what she did, she basically drugged Chuck with some muscle relaxers, kind of tempting him with, she wore a wig and like lipstick and everything just to kind of like play this part, and it's like putting him in like a jacuzzi or whatever, and it's like heating the water up hot, and even at one point stepping on his head, pushing his head further down, and it's to the point even Veronica, being as tough as she is, and it's like, wanting vengeance and that, to make them pay and everything to get the truth out there. It's like, whoa, even she was like, yo, Betty, like, pull that back a little bit. And it's like, at one point she goes, the fact of the matter is, tell the truth, Jason. Tell him what you did to me. It's like, tell him what you did to me, Paulie. And it's like, wait, what? Even Veronica asked her about it later on, be like, yo, what was that about with the whole black wig and everything? And that moment I was like, so was she dressing up to be more like her sister? I don't know, like the black wig and everything, it seemed too specific. So, and then the fact they're saying like, because that was her main motivation behind this. Obviously, she wanted to help out Veronica as well as the other girls, but in her head, it was also the fact it's her sister. Her sister's in whatever condition she's in. Like I said, we haven't really gotten a look at her. I'm sure eventually we will kind of see whatever state Polly's in. I mean, as her mom referenced, was it last episode? The fact is that Polly's like super medicated a lot. So, but the fact is, like, she kind of adopted that persona and was just kind of like, her main problem was like, seeing what Jason did. Obviously, there was something between Jason and Polly, but now she finds out that Jason was one of those guys that treated her sister like nothing but a piece of meat. And her mind is probably like, oh, that's probably one reason why, Polly snapped. So, because she's always believed that Jason was just with Polly just for the sake of being with her. Which, once again, that's something we don't 100% know. Part of me is thinking, like, what if there was a situation where he actually was in love with Polly? Like, kind of going back to it, maybe that's why he was trying to leave. Maybe he was trying to track her down and get her to come with him. I mean, I don't know if she's actually here in Riverdale, wherever she's, getting treatment at. I mean, I would assume it would have to be somewhere nearby. But if it's so nearby, why wouldn't Betty visit her often? Because Betty doesn't even know, because, I mean, her mom kind of forbids her from going. So maybe it's not even in Riverdale, that it's someone else. So maybe that could have been where Jason went. Maybe trying to fix things up there. I don't know. But that was just kind of interesting. And the fact of the matter is, she didn't get rid of it because we do see into her locker that she does still have that wig. And it's like, okay, so like I said, see that very darker side of Betty, and it throws you for a loop because it's like you see her this very nice girl persona that she has, and it's like, but there's also something there, and it's like, has it always been there, or is it because of this whole Polly situation? I mean, to be fair, it seems like she kind of shares that with her mom. Her mom is very twisted because, like, even like she was talking to her mom earlier in the episode, Alice, being like, "Yo, Mom, you shouldn't be putting all this stuff about Jason out there about like, oh, releasing his autopsy report and all this stuff. And like, the fact is, he is still a person. Obviously, you have your problems with him because of Polly and everything, but you should still treat him right because he still was a kid. He's someone, I mean, she didn't say it, but essentially that's someone's kid. Which, I mean, obviously comes out to bite her in the ass later on in the episode when Mama Blossom punches her in the face. It's like, dude, I don't know, like, I don't know if she was always like that too. As I know, I also found out that both her parents work for, I think they call it the registry. It's their newspaper and stuff like that. I thought it was just her mom. It's like, no, both her parents worked for her. But I don't know, like, I don't know whether it's because of Polly's situation that kind of broke her or what. Because obviously she had heavy animosity towards the Blossom family, and it's not even just aimed at them. It was at one point aimed at Archie. It's even aimed at Veronica. I was like, oh, I don't want you hanging around with Veronica. And Betty's like, that's my friend, Mom. Get over it. She's like, oh, I don't want you to kind of get all dolled up because, you know, that's what happened with Polly. Polly tried to grow up too. Like, I think she snapped a little because for one, she's obviously being vindictive towards the Blossom family because of what happened to Polly. So obviously that's one thing. But also at the same time, she's also very stern and very strict, especially when it comes to, I don't know, I feel like you look at the way she talks to Betty. It don't even seem like she talks to her like a mom should. It's just kind of like, I don't know, it's like she tries to be very motherly, but it comes off very, I don't know, disingenuous. It's almost like she's trying to shame her daughter into being like, it's like, oh, you should be this perfect image I have of you, be this, not be who you are, you know? And it's just, I don't know. Because she even went and started crap with Veronica's mom because she's the one that brought it up. Because Veronica didn't want her mom involved in all this, kind of wanted to handle the whole situation by herself. But, you know, Alice went out of her way to be like, your daughter's being shamed for being a slut or whatever. And it's just kind of like, holy shit, dude. Like, why would you do something like that? Because she wasn't coming at like, oh, a concerned mother. It's like, no, it's because I guess it's because, once again, a vindictive side of being like, my daughter's hanging around your daughter. And I mean, there's a part of me I don't remember exactly what she said. She kind of has some other smart ass remarks too, but I'm sure she probably didn't say this. Maybe she did, but I'm sure, like, it seems like the type of thing that Alice would be like, yeah, I don't want my daughter hanging around that slut of a daughter of yours just because she has, I'm not going to say what I was going to say because it just like, nevertheless, it's just, I wouldn't put it past her to try and almost slut shame Veronica herself, but that's more so, like I say, it seems like from Alice, it's all about control. So, other things that went down in this episode is kind of, because basically Jughead's doing his investigation thing because him and Betty kind of reopen the paper at school, and there's that whole, like, obviously, Jughead goes to talk to, I think the dude's name is Doily. Him and his scouts were out there that time because they're the ones that kind of found Cheryl at the time. And then it turns out that basically he was out there firing a gun. Obviously, he doesn't have the right to, and especially because he was around minors and stuff like that. Because basically he's got this mentality of like, oh, he's trying to teach them how to protect themselves. I don't know what he necessarily, I mean, I guess it gets the craziness that is the wild nature and stuff, like, oh, nature can be very vicious, so it's like you need to be prepared. Or was he talking about in general, like, you know, type of like a personal like bully type of situation? I don't know. Had a gun, you know, obviously Jughead kind of holds that against him and everything. He's like, okay, fine, you don't tell anyone about that, I'll tell you what I saw that no one else knows. And he brings up Grundy's car was there, and it's like, oh man, and you see it on Jughead's face, and even he says it in the VO, he's like, man, that whole situation sucks, because it's like, he would do anything to protect, you know, Archie, that's his bro, but it's like, with this coming out now, there's nothing even he can do for Archie, because now it's like, this is something that obviously Betty hears it, so it's not like he could be like, yo, Betty, let's keep this quiet. And it's like, plus this is something they're gonna have to report to the police, especially if they're gonna find out what happened to Jason and everything. Which also makes you wonder how, obviously her mom, like Alice wants Betty to be part of the, run the newspaper with them and everything, but now she's kind of doing it at school. Obviously she'll probably be happy and be like, oh, my daughter's following in my footsteps. But then at the same time, it's probably like, I don't think Alice really cares who killed Jason. All she cares about is like, like I said, kind of starting crap with the family just to humiliate them or, do what she did. Like I said, that's very harsh to do that to someone's child, no matter how many problems you have with the family, it's like to do that to their child. But then again, going back to the Polly situation, maybe she felt like that's kind of how they treated her daughter. I mean, maybe even the way she treated her, the way Betty tells us. I still want to know what that's all about too, like where they stand, Polly and Alice. So, but getting back to it, now the police are going to be involved in everything. Not good, because obviously, Archie went out of his way to protect her. Grundy saying like, oh, obviously saying she wasn't there, but now it's actually pointed towards like, oh yeah, she was totally at the like 4th of July weekend. She was there, and so that brings up so much too, because it's like them, once again, kind of bring up what she brought up. It's like the sheriff dives into it a little too much. We'll find out about Archie, which will screw over Archie too, because it's like Archie lied. Archie said that he was there with his dog, and it's like now it's going to come out to be like, oh, it's not even just about the student-teacher relationship, which will obviously play a part in it, but it's also because they lied. It's like, oh, you're trying to alibi each other out because the fact of the matter is you were there. It's like, who's to say you weren't the ones that killed Jason? Obviously, the question is what would be the motive behind it, because obviously this whole circumstance between him, like being tied up and apparently frozen. I didn't know he was frozen. Didn't catch that last episode, but because Betty brought it up this episode about him being frozen and everything, so I'm guessing he was kept in like a meat locker or something. Not unless it was like he was, wet, and then they kind of kept him in the coat. Nevertheless, because he had to be tied up somewhere. So, not unless they kept him tied up in the water and kept pulling him up and dunking him or something. But nevertheless, it's like now, this could point as Archie being a possible suspect too. Maybe, I mean, never mind. Now I'm thinking about it. It's like technically we know what the motive could be. It could be like, oh, Jason found out about your little affair with your teacher, and you both wanted to keep him quiet, so you had him killed and stuff like that. You panicked, you didn't know what to do, so you kept him, but then you felt like you had no choice but to get rid of him. So, and maybe we'll end up finding out some dirty secrets about Miss Grundy, because like I said, that's obviously the big thing, that everyone in town has secrets, and I'm sure she's definitely got one, just like the Blossom family's got some, and I'm sure Alice has some as well. So I'm very curious to find out, like, because this is going to come out, because there was even that moment in the episode where his dad's like, so what, talking to Grundy, like, so why did you take such an interest in my son? And Grundy's like, well, he's such a special kid and everything. And it's like, maybe he kind of is a little suspicious there. But nevertheless, like, it's going to be interesting to find out how Betty feels like wanting this to come out. I mean, I don't know if it would necessarily come out. I'm sure Jughead's going to try to do everything he can to help Archie. Maybe he's going to tell Archie, like, yo, Archie, you need to get out in front of this. Like, dude, no matter what you try and do, it's going to come out. Like, it's too late because it's so big into the investigation. But also other things I didn't talk about. One other thing was the fact that Chuck and his boys got kicked off the team. But then you had Jughead being like, yeah, but no one saw the fact is that in the coming weeks, there would be ramifications for that, which I'm not surprised. The way Chuck was giving Betty, as well as Veronica, the looks, as well as all the other girls, he seems like a vindictive dude. I mean, that's kind of already shown by the way he was acting and things he said in this episode. Like, he's a very vindictive dude. But what that entails, I have no idea. I mean, because there was that moment where you had that girl, I forgot her name. She's a girl who basically kind of came to Betty first about this whole situation. During the entire time Betty was doing what she was doing, like, she was behind the door smiling and closing. So I'm wondering if there's going to be a situation where it's like, there's more to this situation with her. I mean, obviously there's probably the side of her that's just happy that they're getting what they deserve, especially Chuck, because he took advantage of her like that and everything. Saying that they did sexual stuff together, even though they didn't. He kind of ruined her life. So maybe that was that, or maybe there was a lot more to that. I have to wait to find out. So And then another thing that kind of popped up this episode was the whole Josie situation. Like, obviously, you had Archie wanting to come to them for more help with this whole circumstances, with the music and everything. And some interesting things came up in conversation. Like, to me, I look back on it now, kind of seeing, especially hearing the way Josie talks about the whole situation. Like, she's like, why we're called the Pussycat Dolls? Because we have to claw our way to kind of be taken seriously, like to be respected. And to me, I start taking the I kind of get where Josie probably why she was originally pissed at Archie and not wanting to help him or anything, is because she probably didn't take Archie seriously, because it's like, oh, you're just some kid who wants to, music is my thing. This is kind of like our thing. It's our kind of, because music helps a lot of people through issues, and like music is their outlet. And so she probably looks at Archie as someone who doesn't really take it seriously. It's just kind of a passing fad, but for them, it means everything. Essentially alluding to the fact is like, oh, there's a race aspect that be added to it as well, because it's like, as you can see with Riverdale, not the most heavily diverse town ever. And so it's like, even her mom becoming mayor, not the most easiest thing, apparently. And then she's kind of like, the fact is that, because Archie's like, oh, I can write songs for you. She's like, oh, you're going to write songs for us? Because basically, like, we write these songs because they have meaning to us and everything. And don't come in here assuming that you can do what we do, kind of get across the message that we would like to get across. And it's just because it's like they've worked so hard to get where they are, and it's like they had to work hard to get there. But it's like, from someone, once again, kind of being in Archie's situation, it's like you have a lot of advantages your way. There are just many doors that could be open for you. It's like you're coming to us and everything simply because but you're coming to us, but the fact is you could have any other opportunity. That's not the case for us. There's even a point where Valerie is trying to interject and defend him, but he was like, no, it's okay. He understood. He's like, you're 100% right, Josie. So like I said, I kind of understand where Josie's coming from. Like, especially this, like hearing her say all that stuff. It's like, I understand why, the way what she sees when she looks at Archie. She looks at Archie as like a privileged kid who could just have things his way, whatever he wants. Like, that there's no true essence or true art to music for him, that it's just kind of a passing fad almost, where it means a lot to them. It's their voice, it's their outlet. So, but it seems like things are slowly getting okay, because obviously Archie helps out with the song and everything, and they even play it because he snuck out of the house to make, hear them play it and everything. So it seems like things are slowly kind of warming up between them. It's like they played one of his songs. He even kind of helped, like, oh, maybe we should change this up and that. It's like, maybe change the lyrics to this, because their normal lyricist is Valerie, and even she was kind of like, oh, okay, this is, like I said, before Josie came in, it seemed like they were kind of having a good conversation, kind of joking around and everything. So I'm very interested to find out more about the Pussycats, like who they are. Like, obviously, this is like a little window into them, but I definitely hope we get more opportunities to kind of learn a little bit more about them going forward. So, overall, a very good episode, and I cannot wait to find out where we go in the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.